Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty and welcome to another How to Make Seamless Patterns in Procreate tutorial. We're going to be using the diamond method to make these. If you want to know a bit more in depth about how that works, you can check out my other full tutorial on that. But for now, we're just going to go ahead and follow along with this one. We're using the Pattern Maker canvas. This one is different to the one that I normally use. This is my Volume 2 Boho Brights selection, and this one is called Brightly Painted. It's got these lovely brush strokes here on the background. So we're going to be making a watermelon pattern today, and if you hop over to my Freebie Library, you can download this watermelon stamp brush, which we're using to stamp out the motifs on our sketch layer. So we're going to select this one, and I have my size at 18% for this one. I'm going to be using this watermelon palette, which you can also find over in my Freebie Library. I'm going to grab this 50% grey, and we're just going to stamp a few of these onto our canvas. So let's put up here. There is some subtle rotation built into these, but I'm not going to worry too much about getting them all in the right place at the moment. We'll just go ahead and stamp these in. So you'll notice I'm stamping some on this edge, but not on this one, because what's up here will be repeated down here, and what's on this edge will be repeated up here. So once we've got those loosely laid out, we can merge that down with our sketch diamond. The reason I don't just draw it straight on there is if I wanted to move stuff around before I merge it down, it saves me having to move around the edges of the diamond before I actually need to. So now it's all on the same layer. We can duplicate this, and making sure we've got magnetics and snapping turned on, we can drag this down and snap it to the left, making sure that we've got these orange lines there. That means we've snapped it perfectly into place. And if you zoom in on the sides here, you'll see that these markers line up perfectly as well. That's another way to tell that you've got it snapped in place perfectly. And that's why I like using this more precise diamond canvas. You can make your own just by drawing a diamond, but using it precisely will give you that extra visual clue. So now we're going to duplicate this bottom layer again, drag it up and over to the left, duplicate and drag it up and over to the right, duplicate and drag it down and to the right. And now we've got all of these other outside areas filled with what we drew inside. So we can just illustrate these motifs here, and then we can fill the rest of the canvas with it. So straight away I can see these ones here are clumped together a bit too close. So let's turn the opacity down on this top one so that we can see what's what. And on this layer here, I'm going to grab my select tool, put it on freehand, and let's move this one first of all. And I'm going to go to snapping, and I'm going to turn those both off so I can move this around exactly where I want it to be. So let's try putting that one there. These ones we can turn around as well, because there's too many here all facing in that same direction. Turn that one that way up, and then maybe this one will rotate as well. Oops, don't want to make it smaller. Put that one down there, and then to see where this is all matching up now, because we've moved stuff, I'm going to delete this top one. I'm going to repeat that offset with snapping on and drag it down into the corners. And then that's fixed slightly, but I think this one needs to go up a bit further, and then this one probably needs to come down across. I'd like to be able to see how everything is kind of working in the corners. So what I'm going to do is offset this by 1800 pixels either way. So let's duplicate this top layer, drag half of it to the side, and then the bottom one, we can drag it that way. You only see we have an X now instead of a diamond, and we just need to repeat that with the bottom layer. So now that that's all in place, you can see we've offset this to halfway so that we can see what's going on in the middle. So let's find out which this one is on. So it's on this top layer. So I'm going to grab it on there, And let's turn snapping off. Move it down there a bit, and then this one here, I think we just want to move up a little bit. I think there will do. So this top one was the one I was just working on, so I'm going to delete this one underneath. I'm going to duplicate this one, and with snapping back on again. Line it up with the sides until we've got those orange lines there. And then drag this one over. And that was the one that was around the outside, so we need to do our offset now to get the middle bits going on. So we're kind of working almost in reverse with that one to how you might have normally seen me do these. But sometimes your motif is on, when you do the offset into the middle, your motif isn't on the layer that you want to be working on, so it's okay to work on the other layer and then bring them back into the middle for this one. I will drag this one on top so that they're in my normal order now. So I think that's probably looking nicely evenly spaced out. One thing we can do to check is a swipe down with 3 fingers and tap copy all. We can come up here to our very top layer group, swipe down again with 3 fingers, and we're going to paste. And then I'm going to drag this blue node up into the middle so that you can see it snap there with the orange lines. I'm going to duplicate and drag it over to the right, merge those together, duplicate, and drag those down there. Oops, don't want to merge it with the texture layer. That's why we lock those. So now you can see this repeating in a smaller scale, and you can have a look and see if you think yours are evenly spaced out. If you see any big gaps or ones that are too close together, you can figure out which one that is and then go back and have a shuffle around on here. Take your time over this. Getting them evenly spaced out isn't a thing that comes quickly or easily to us. This has taken me a long time of doing these patterns to be able to just stamp them out quickly like that and have them mostly evenly spaced out. It's a thing that comes with practice, and the more patterns you make, the better you'll get at just knowing where to stamp stuff. So take your time over spacing these out. So once we've completed our sketch, the next thing we're going to do is to start working on our pattern layer. I'm going to close this group, and I'm going to reduce the opacity on the outside ones because we don't need to illustrate those, we just need to illustrate these. So we can close that group now. And this pattern layer, I'm going to leave this layer turned on so that you can always see what I'm working on. You can hide that on yours while you're working. And let's set a background colour, and we'll use this nice blue colour. You can see those lovely gorgeous textures coming in there with this darker colour. And to illustrate these, I'm going to do something slightly different to what I normally do. I'm going to draw everything in white, and then I'm going to add a scribbly overlay over the top. So let's grab this, well, it's not quite white, it's a creamy colour. And I'm going to use my brush set from my original Pattern Maker canvas and brush set, and I'm going to grab the tracing crayon, and I'm going to use this one at 18%. And all I'm going to do is just go around and loosely trace around these watermelon wedge shapes. And as I've said before, the reason that I like to use these stamp motifs just for the sketch layer is so that I can have each motif be unique when I draw it. So each one is a slightly different size and shape when it comes to the proper illustration layer. And it gives it a bit more of a rough and ready, unique, hand-drawn feel. So once all those are done, we're going to drag from our colour up here down into there, and then we can tap on continue filling, and we can fill all these in. And I can see I've missed one down here, just quickly do that one. And now that we've covered up our sketch layer, I'm going to drag it up on top of my pattern layer, and I'm going to turn down the opacity on these, so that way we can see the lines to follow, so we can still see what we're drawing. So now I want to add some nice red colour onto these, so I'm going to add a layer above, and I'm going to tap on the layer and tap on clipping mask, and that's going to clip everything down to this layer I'm going to grab this nice pink colour, and using this fun sketcher brush, I've got my brush size set to 59%, I'm going to draw over and just loosely scribble over like that. And I like this fun sketcher brush because it looks like a really chunky kid's crayon, and you get these nice textures going in there. Some of this texture is down to the overlays on top. If I turn them off, you can see that's how it looks without, and with them on, you've got these nice darker bits of a more intense colour coming in there. I prefer to work with these overlay textures on so I can see and adjust the colours as I'm going through. Yeah, I find if I know I'm going to eventually use an overlay texture on my pattern, it's best to work with it on there, because then you know how it's going to look and you can adjust the colours. Whereas if you drew something, if this was ultimately the colour we wanted it, and if I now, let's just fill this layer with this colour. So that was the colour we wanted it, and we illustrated it without the textures on. When we then come to put an overlay texture on, you can see it adjusts the colour slightly. So that's why I prefer to work with these overlay textures already on. So I'll just quickly finish doing these. I need to go back to the proper colour. That one. So there we go, and then you can see by drawing them in a lighter colour and then drawing with this scribble over the top, we get that nice lighter colour showing through. If we hadn't used the lighter colour to do this base layer and we just use this, we'd see the colour of the background underneath, which kind of looks okay, but I prefer to have a neutral colour for the underneath of all my scribbles. So now we will get the green colour in. So this layer which I just added, I'm going to clip that down as well. Grab this green colour and I'm going to scribble some loosely, leaving a small gap there along this edge here. I really like illustrating in this way. You can be nice and precise with your base layer shapes, and then you get to be all loose and scribbly over the top. And it stays nicely in the edges with the clipping mask. There we go, there's those done. And the next thing I'm going to do is add another layer above again, clip this one down, and I'm going to use this light creamy colour again, and I'm going to use this shading crayon. I'm going to just scribble in with here to blend out that line there, and actually I might drag that, put these red ones on top. So I've just dragged these red ones on top, so we've got the green underneath, then that blending layer of the cream, and then the red on top. So just go through loosely blending that line out. That's all of those done. So all that we have to do now is our watermelon seeds. So I'm going to add a layer above this one. This one doesn't need to be clipped at all. And we'll grab the tracing crayon again, and we want to stick with the white colour, because if we were to scribble over with this, we wouldn't get much of that white showing through. So go back to the tracing crayon and our light colour. And I'm just going to make that a bit small, maybe. Do I need to make it smaller? That should be right like that. Just make sure you press quite lightly at the beginning of the teardrop there. And we're just going to go through and draw all of these watermelon seeds in. There we go, there's all those done, and now we're going to add another layer above, clip this one down, and we'll grab this almost black watermelon seed colour and the fun sketcher, and then we just scribble over all of these watermelon seeds like that. And actually we can turn off this sketch layer now. That will help us see a bit more whether we're getting dark enough or not. And that is all our motifs illustrated. That is all the illustration we need to do for this pattern. The rest will be made by building out the outside of the tile. I always like to work non-destructively, which means always keeping a copy that you can go back to and edit things if you want. So you could do this two ways. You could swipe to duplicate this and then make sure that you hide the pattern marker layer, and then you can flatten it. If you're running short of layers on your iPad, say you were working on a more complex pattern than this that had lots of layers, another way you could do it is, this is our layered pattern folder. You could turn off everything else except this layer, hide your pattern marker, and then you can swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, and then just go up to here, and then you can paste that in, and that will give you the same as you get by duplicating the group and flattening. Sometimes you don't have enough, say you had, sometimes I make patterns that have maybe like 30 layers in there. If you don't have enough spare layers, you won't be able to duplicate that to have another 30 layers and then flatten it. So you can hide everything else apart from that, copy all, and then paste, and that will allow you to do the same thing, but you won't have to have so many layers on the go. So let's put those layers back in. And what we would need to do is put a mark on this layer going off the corners. So we've got something going all the way to the edge on this corner, all the way to the edge on this side, all the way to the edge here, and all the way to the edge there. That way, when we tap to transform this layer, we can grab the whole layer and move the whole thing around by exactly half. So let's duplicate this layer here. We'll drag it down and over to the left. Duplicate it again, drag it up to the left. And as I do this, I'm making sure that I can see those orange lines there so that I know that I'm snapping exactly. And then down and to the right. And once you've got those all in place, you can pinch to merge those top 4 together. You can erase these little corner marks in the middle, and on this bottom layer, you can take those off the edges now. And that is now our seamless pattern tile. You can export this as a PNG or a JPEG. And if we want to build it out into a preview here, we can swipe down with 3 fingers, copy all, go up to the top layer here, swipe down again to paste. And then just like we did before, we can drag this up, snap it into the middle there, and then duplicate it over to the right. Pinch those 2 together, duplicate, and drag those down to the bottom. So that is how to make a seamless watermelon pattern in Procreate. You can find the pattern maker canvas. This one is the brightly painted canvas, which has these nice paint strokes in the background. In this new Boho Brights selection, there's a slight difference on some of them, in that some of them have a background texture and then an overlay texture over the top up here. If you wanted to, you could bring the background texture up onto the top, and then you would get these brush strokes coming onto the watermelons as well, but I think it looks nicer to have that as a background. But that's the great thing about these, you can play around with them and do them however you'd like to do them. So you can find this with the other Boho Brights canvases over in my Etsy shop, and my newsletter subscribers get 10% off. All the links for everything are in my bio. You can find on my website and my Freebie Library the stamp brush to do these watermelon shapes, and also the palette that I've used to make this. If you post your pictures over on Instagram, don't forget to tag me at @BeckyFlaherty, and I will look forward to seeing you for another tutorial next time.